Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the Daily Market Insight for Monday, the 11th of April. All right, now as we come in to basically start the week, it's good to have a look across the board, see what's happening on the currency, see where everything is technically. But most importantly, what you need to do is come and see what the focus is each week. Now, you have the big data last week. We had Canadian employment numbers on Friday, a bit disappointing. Well, the unemployment rate was better, but the change, not as good. So a bit of mixed reaction there. So, but last week's data is all factored in. Now, what you have to understand is this week, there's new stuff that the market is going to target, right? We've got Tuesday's US CPI numbers, very important for the prospect of what the Fed are going to do. And also the ECB meeting on Thursday. Okay, that's the foremost thing you have to understand, because the currencies relating to those two events, obviously the US CPI, you're going to have all the majors in play, and equities, bonds, everything else. ECB, well, euro and euro crosses, right? And obviously maybe European equity markets, and that could flow onto the North American equity markets. But then have a look behind the scenes around what is actually happening, right? So if I have a look, click in here, like the euro, there's the French election, right? This is a big event, right? You've got the French leader, Emmanuel Macron, right? And the far right challenger, Marine Le Pen, right? Now, why is this important? Because Le Pen, the far right, he's saying if we win, we're out of the EU, right? That's cataclysmic for the EU. They can't afford to have a big country like France sort of pull out. That would be a major issue. So that there is going to hang over the euro and euro crosses for the time being, almost up until the election. Now, if you go back to Brexit, right, and the situation there, and then they had the the referendum with Scotland, whether they're going to leave, all these sorts of things. It created a huge amount of issues trading sterling, right? There's a lot of fake news. There's a lot of real news, which is lost amongst the fake news and blah, blah, blah. It's a bit of a nightmare. So understand euro could be a little bit loose until the French election, right? So that's one of the sort of random geopolitical events we're going to consider when we do look at the what's going on in the major instruments. The other part, obviously, US CPI number is going to be important across the board. As I said, if we get clear direction from the Fed and the US dollar, trading is very easy, right? If we don't get that clear direction, the majors start chopping about and direction becomes random, and we don't really want that. At the moment, the dollar index sort of back to the top side. That goes with euro sort of drifting down. As it is, the market is very concerned about the right getting up in France and what that spells for the EU. It could be very interesting. We'll see how it plays out. What does it mean for everything else? Now, looking at the volatility index back at 22, there's an inkling of concern in the market at this point. Oil down at 95. It's broken through this sort of level over here. So maybe downward pressure on oil, right? Maybe dollar CAD goes up. We'll see how that goes. But it's been a bit caught up, obviously, with the Canadian employment numbers at the end of last week. US equity markets, well, to me, like they've topped out. I was sort of talking about this relief rally we saw the previous week or so. It was a little bit tricky. I always thought, well, as long as inflation and the Fed are doing stuff, it's very important that they concentrate on, or the markets will be sort of anticipating equities getting belted, and that will cause some issues there. Bitcoin, I guess with the Russian-Ukraine situation sort of just rolling over a bit, as I said like weeks ago, the market becomes desensitized to these events over a period of time. And you know what, looking through the news, you wouldn't even know there was anything on. Okay, so maybe that run to safety for the Bitcoins or the cryptos at the moment is running a little bit thin, and we may see a dip lower. It's just breaking through a level on the downside there. Commodity index still sort of banging away to the top side. Has sort of started trading sideways a bit, but still buoyant, right? Overall, the basket that make up the commodity index still looking pretty healthy just at the moment. All right, now let me just come over here and just give you a look at the what's going through the market at the moment. Now, the biggest lead is the US equity futures, right? Especially on Mondays, right? You want to see what news has come out over the weekend. US equity futures are saying that the US equities are going to open up down, right? You'd expect a risk-off profile there. We've pretty much got it. Euro is at down at the moment. It's the only one, obviously, with that geopolitical event, the French election, causing issues. But we do have a basic risk-off profile where the dollar pairs are going up and sterling Aussie Kiwi are going down, right? Sort of keeping the euro, once again, isolating that instrument. Understand it's going to be loose on random reports, newspaper articles, etc. It's going to be a little bit tricky. The keep an eye on the oil trade, right? With oil breaking back down to 95, this has got to be on the table, right? There's got to be some opportunities here, whether it's through CAD, dollar CAD, CAD yen, oil, or even some of those oil companies, right? There's a few different avenues where you can hit oil. Keep an eye on the commodities. At the moment on the day, they aren't having such a good run, but we'll see how that plays out. This is the Asian time zone Monday, very thin markets, not much volume going through. They will kick into gear as London comes into play now, and we'll see how that sort of rolls over. And that's pretty much it. Bit of sea of red across the cryptos. As I said, it can be quite easy. If you see Bitcoin going down, to me, it's a telltale sign that the other currencies, cryptocurrencies, are going to sort of lead that as well. Now, as I said, just coming back to the major fundamental aspect of the market, right? The fundamentals, the economic fundamentals that are coming out. As I mentioned, Tuesday, you've got US CPI numbers. They've got the employment numbers there out of the UK as well. Sterling's sort of coming back into it. It's still trading quite soft, but we'll see how that plays out. They've got those US CPI numbers, right? Very important. This is going to be I've actually circled the UK ones there. The very important for what's going through in the market. Retail sales as well. And you've also, as I said, Thursday, we've got the, if I can just find it, I'm sort of scrolling too quickly, the ECB, right? The ECB meeting. You want to be keeping a close eye on that. So US retail CPI, and I guess US retail sales for that matter, and Eurozone ECB meeting are the two big ones, right? Two big events. Now, there's some peripheral stuff, and depends on where you are, like Aussie employment numbers Thursday, right? Pretty good number usually, but I think Aussie's getting pulled around with the, the moves in commodities, etc. It's a little bit sort of hard to sort of play out sometime. And there's those US CPI numbers, if we get the right ones. So it's going to be very important there. Now, if I just give you a run through the various other instruments, like obviously the currencies first, say the Swiss and, well, I've circled sterling there, very similar, but it's more, the Swiss is a result of what happens in euro. So choppy activity on the top side there usually correlates with choppy activity on the downside. Sterling, you know what? Sterling and euro trading very closely as they usually do, and as is the Aussie and Kiwi. Right, I'm still surprised the Aussie's still up here. I know the commodities are holding it up, but something's got to give. Now you've got oil falling here, which would suggest dollar CAD rallies, and we had that mixed Canadian employment numbers Friday. So you know what? Once everyone forgets about the Canadian employment numbers, if oil keeps falling, dollar CAD's got to go up. Right, that's the way I see it. And dollar yen at the moment, a little bit more of a safe haven play, back up to 125. It's loving the fresh air up top there. And that's pretty much it, right? You don't have to overcomplicate it. I won't go through everything. Otherwise, we'll be here for another 10 minutes. Just keep an eye on the trail, right? If you're not sure, an easy one is look at the US equity futures, see if the equity markets are impacting the currencies, right? And see what's happening across the board on the cryptos and crypto crosses. And then you can piece it together with commodities, oil, and as exactly what I was saying there before, keep a very close eye on this French election, right? If there's any sign of the right winning, you're going to see a big sell-off in euro for sure. All right, guys, have a good week. Good to be back online. Hope everyone's been trading well. All the very best and have a good week. Cheerio.